Hey, it's Tim Pierce. Those were James Santiago's hands. James is showing us Wind Cries Mary off the top of his head. But he really, really knows so much about how those sounds were made. That's what this video is about. James is the project manager and sound designer for the UA Aux. And we both plugged our vintage Marshalls into the Aux box with no speakers. And we shaped the sounds from our iPads. It was pretty fun. Click the link below if you want to check out the Masterclass. So this sound you created in the Aux was based on the M160.
That is that original mid-60s M160 ribbon on a Marshall. And of course I'm blending a little bit of a U67, which, you know, if we go back to microphones again, you know, 47s are like a great vocal mic typically in the 60s and 70s. The guitar mic would have been a 67. Okay. Or it would have been an overhead picking up some room. So I'm kind of blending these two together, and that's literally all it is. And if I put some room back on it. The fun part is that there's a visual aspect to it, that I can see the mics, because where the mics are on the cabinet are literally what they sound like when they're on there. So like, well, if I just grab this 160 and go off axis, there's that really buttery thing if I wanted to push with a drive.
Very cool.
Yeah, but the real magic to this, which is one of the weird things, is it was another Hendrix inspiration that, like this actually, if you listen to Axis Bold as Love, Wind Cries Mary, tunes like that, it was always a mystery to me how he played with no reverb or delay. Because I was growing up, it's like, ooh, there's a baby blanket there's something just sitting around me that's not making everything feel like it's like this. There was a little bit of a, sort of that sustaining part of the guitar that made you feel like there was something else helping you sound good. But what I realized was it was all about the room. It's pushing air in a room and getting that sort of cushion around the note. Because a lot of sounds are room and the reverb. Right. And I think a lot of folks, because you know this, because how many sessions have you done where you're in a large cutting room and there's ambience, but then they still add plate reverb?
Yeah. I actually did a video recently where I dissected Smoke on the Water, and the thing that identifies that sound most to me is this short room sound. I didn't realize that until just now when I started going into it and going, wait a second, what's so cool about that is he's going, and there's a short play, and it's obviously the room. It's not a simulation. Which it's the room it was in.
It was the room it was in, which I think as I looked that one up too in my notes for things, because I just do this every day.
Yeah, I know you do.
But that was like this castle. And there wasn't even a studio. They were just like in this long hallway. So it was not a treated room. The back, it was likely, it could have been AC3, but even the Marshall, it still would have been bouncing off the walls. Yeah. And there's there's that cushion. Yeah. That makes you feel like, well, when I play my little practice amp dry at home, it is not any fun.
When you distinguish between a room and a reverb, the room is shorter, right? You're hearing a limit. You're hearing it hit a wall.
You're hitting a wall. It's literally hitting a wall. Yeah. And then hitting that wall, and then bouncing, and then hitting the other wall, and then bouncing. There's this imaging to that it's this rumble, and he's pushing this air when you hear it, and that's all in the room. So if I recognize that wavering thing, but it's not there if I take because it needs that room. It's actually floating through the wood floors and it's rumbling the room, and that's what makes me feel like all of a sudden like there's that cushion. But like the Wind Cries Mary was a specific sound, the solo, the tone of that I never could get coming off the amp. And there's this thing I think all guitar players, and I'm still like that. We spend so much time on every little part up until the speaker. So we look at amps, we look at pedals and strings and picks and guitars. Yeah. But at some point we're like, well, it must end at the guitar speaker. No, that's where the other side opens up, and then you get your mind blown again. And so in my research of this, because I wanted to learn about everything Hendrix, so I read every book. Anyone who had worked and talked with Hendrix, I was just asking questions for this. Went on for decades, years. So when it came down to, I had this moment of listening to it, and then working on another project where I got to hear some of the tapes. Are You Experienced, which was tracked in '66 at Olympic Studios in England, and tracked very quickly. Not a whole lot of overdubs. In fact, Wind Cries Mary, it was said that it was actually the demo. That you should have recorded it again.
I see.
So on the tape I heard 4 tracks, drums on 1 in mono, bass mono, the main rhythm guitar we hear on the song, and then 1 for vocal.
Did you hear a multi-track of this?
I heard the original. I had the original tape in my hand.
How did you do that?
There was another project I worked on called Guitar Port a long time ago at Line 6.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah,
yes, yeah.
And one of the projects was, of the many, was, okay, go to New York and spend a week with Eddie Kramer.
Got it.
And go through the vault. So I'm like, okay. I was like, okay, easy, sure, okay. But it was funny because I knew this stuff inside and out. But just sitting there doing the documentation, sitting next to him as he's going through the tracks, and I'd see the tape boxes come in, and I could just see everything lining up. Like, okay, it's a 4-track tape. There's 3 passes of it, and you would just see the date, something February of '66 or something. And then we'd put it up, and then what would blow my mind was you put the faders up, and there it was. There was no post-processing happening. It was they committed to the sound.
Yeah, I remember that with all the multi-tracks you hear of those classic bands, it pretty much mixes itself.
Yeah.
You just put the faders up and it's done.
And it's done. And a lot of it's committed in mono. So all these drums are like one little mono track.
Yeah.
But so when it came to what I was curious about was the solo.
Drums, bass,
guitar, and then the lead vocal. So I'm like, well, what's going to happen when the solo comes in? Because he had obviously, they cut the song at one time, so there's your rhythm track cut live once. Yeah. He did the overdub as a vocal. And I'm like, whoa, okay, where's the solo coming? And at some point he had soloed the vocal. And I could hear Jimmy singing, doing this. And doing this. Just kind of keeping...
Oh!
And I'm like, holy crap, he's holding his guitar.
Holding the guitar while he's
singing. And he's going to do the solo during the vocal take. And you just hear him just like he's holding it like a little baby, like he's got it with him. And then the solo comes in, and here comes this blazing guitar solo right on the vocal take. And then it's like he knew it was a demo to him. He sang it, he played a guitar solo, and he was done. And when I asked, I dug into it some more, I'm like, it's not distorted, but it had a lot of sustain and this pop to the guitar sound.
Yeah. That
it was still a clean Marshall. And what I found out, it was a pi limiter.
Oh.
That Eddie had smashed the crap out of the guitar solo with a pi limiter. Wow. Which, again, now that the room, it brought up all the room tone.
Right, so everything that's happening after the guitar sound in the room gets brought forward because the limiter is bringing everything forward. Everything.
Everybody's
Every breath.
coming up.
Yeah.
That's it.
There it is.
And there it is. That. But that without it, it's sort of not the vibe. We need that room. That's that explosive pillow.
One of the things you said, it's not just, because I talk about it as hitting the back wall of a room,
right.
But it's basically hitting that wall, coming back to the other wall, hitting the next wall, hitting the other wall, and the microphone, which is just in front of the cabinet, is hearing all that.
It's hearing all of that, plus the fact that, as I found out in later Hendrix tunes, when he was cutting this stuff live, he was so loud that there is a good percentage of him coming through the drum overheads.
Oh, yeah.
So now you've got an M160 on the cabinet, and 20 feet away, this other microphone meant for the drum overheads, basically picking up all of that room. And that's why when you hear stuff like Axis Bold as Love, it's like, how did it get so big sounding? But it's not a reverb, and it's not an effect.
Yeah.
And you figure it's 4 tracks, and we could spend 2 days talking about that track. But it's the thing. We will probably.